Welcome to Bookish Mind, Season 07, Episode 04, where we confront the raw, unvarnished truth of leadership as we delve into Chapter 4, When Things Fall Apart, from Ben Horowitz's transformative book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Today, we're stripping away the glamour, the unicorn stories, and getting straight to the brutal realities of running a company. This isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about facing utter crisis when everything seems to be collapsing around you.
And that's precisely why Horowitz is our guide for this deep dive. As a Silicon Valley veteran, a former CEO, he's been in the absolute deepest trenches of what he calls the struggle.
Mhm.
His book isn't really a blueprint for success. It's a raw, honest account of what you must do after you've already made the difficult choices, maybe even screwed up. So our mission today is to extract those vital insights on navigating the abyss when, well, all feels lost.
Okay, so let's begin with a fascinating contrast. Peter Thiel, the tech investor, he famously distinguishes between an indeterminate world, where statistics and probability rule, and a determinate one, where calculus can precisely predict outcomes, like sending a rocket to the moon. Thiel suggests business is increasingly indeterminate, sort of a random walk where you just play the odds. Does that play the odds idea resonate with you?
Well, Thiel's perspective, it suggests a powerful shift towards accepting probabilistic outcomes, right? Thinking statistically. It's a very modern, data-driven view. Calculate the likelihoods, react accordingly. But Horowitz, true to his style, pushes back hard on that.
He really does. Horowitz talks about this truly harrowing moment at LoudCloud, teetering on bankruptcy. There was this critical deal that absolutely had to close. He met with the legendary coach, Bill Campbell, who, after hearing all the details, just looked Ben in the eye and delivered this shocking, blunt advice. He said, "Ben, you need to do something in addition to working on this deal. You need to prepare the company for bankruptcy." Huh. I mean, can you imagine hearing that when you're fighting for your company's life?
It's incredibly poignant, almost like a doctor telling you a patient is dead but just doesn't know it yet. That was the emotional weight. And it underscores that only the truest, closest friends would ever have the courage to deliver such a horrifying truth.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what Horowitz learned from that rock bottom moment, it radically shaped his philosophy. He says startup CEOs should never, ever play the odds. He didn't build that bankruptcy plan, Campbell suggested, his takeaway. Whether your chances are 9 in 10 or like 1 in 1,000, your task is exactly the same. You must find the answer. It's not about the probability, it's the absolute imperative.
Exactly. Horowitz's defiant conclusion is, I don't believe in statistics. I believe in calculus.
Hmm.
For a leader facing impossible odds, this mindset implies this unwavering belief that despite the chaos, there is a path, there is an answer. It's your absolute duty to calculate it, to find it, and execute it, no matter how improbable it seems. It's a total rejection of just giving up.
That I believe in calculus mindset, it leads us right into what Horowitz so vividly calls the struggle. People always ask him, what's the secret to being a successful CEO? And his answer is incredibly blunt. There isn't one. But if there's one skill that truly stands out, it's the ability to focus and make the best move when there are literally no good moves. It's those moments when you feel most like hiding or giving up that you can actually make the biggest difference. That's the core challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is where Horowitz really sets himself apart from, typical management books. Most focus on how to do things right so you don't screw up. But he focuses on what you must do after you have screwed up.
Hmm.
He actually puts this section first in the book for a reason. He draws on the Bushido principle, the way of the warrior. Keep death in mind at all times. A CEO who kind of internalizes these lessons early on can maintain proper focus, even when they're just building culture or hiring.
He paints such a vivid, almost crushing picture of how those initial dreams turn into nightmares. You start with this clear vision, amazing environment, smartest people, beautiful product, you know the drill, and then you wake up and things have gone terribly wrong. Your product has hard-to-fix issues, the market tanked. Employees lose confidence, cash runs low, competitors are eating your lunch, and suddenly the walls just start closing in. It's a truly visceral description.
And Horowitz's specific, raw descriptions of the struggle, they're incredibly powerful and relatable, I think, for anyone who's built anything. It's that moment you wonder why you even started. When self-doubt spirals into self-hatred, feeling utterly alone, even when you're surrounded by people. Food loses its taste. You can't hear people over the noise in your head. He calls it the land of broken promises and crushed dreams, this gut-wrenching feeling like your gut's boiling so much you feel like spitting blood. He makes that clear. It's not failure itself, but this relentless pressure that often causes failure, especially for the unprepared or the weak. He even says going on vacation makes it worse. The struggle has no mercy. It's brutal.
It's so powerful because he insists that every great entrepreneur, from Steve Jobs to Mark Zuckerberg, went through the struggle. They struggled. But he's also quick to caution, right? That doesn't guarantee you'll make it. You might not. Yet, paradoxically, he says, the struggle is where greatness comes from. It's the crucible.
It truly is. And he acknowledges there's no single answer to the struggle, no magic wand, but he offers some stuff that may or may not help. These hard-won lessons forged right there in the fire.
Okay, let's dive into those hard-won lessons. What did he learn about surviving when things truly fall apart?
Okay, first, don't put it all on your shoulders. It's natural to think your problems will upset your team more, but actually the opposite is often true. You can't share every single burden, obviously, but share every burden you can. Get the maximum number of brains on the problems, even the really big, scary existential threats. He tells this story about Opsware losing too many deals. He called an all-hands meeting and told the entire company flat out, we're getting our asses kicked and we will die if we don't stop the bleeding. And you know what? The team rallied. They built a winning product and it saved them.
That's an incredible act of leadership, just laying it bare like that. And then his next piece of advice. This is not checkers. This is motherfucking chess. I love that line. He says tech businesses are just incredibly complex. The tech moves, competition moves, the market moves, people move. It's like playing three-dimensional chess, right? There is always a move. When you think you have no moves left, think about taking your company public with 6 weeks of cash left in 2001, the absolute worst time for a tech IPO. He did that. There's always a move.
Always a move. Then, he says, play long enough and you might get lucky. In the tech game, tomorrow looks nothing like today. If you just survive long enough to see tomorrow, it might bring the answer that seems impossible right now. And, critically important, don't take it personally. He admits, look, the mess is probably all your fault. You hired the people, made the calls. But hey, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. Everyone makes mistakes. Every CEO makes thousands. Beating yourself up doesn't help anyone.
And finally, he states it very bluntly. Remember that this is what separates the women from the girls. Or the men from the boys, I suppose. If you want to be great, this is the challenge. If you don't want to be great, then maybe you never should have started a company in the first place. Nothing about the struggle is easy, clearly, but these insights, they provide a path, right? A way to keep fighting.
It's all about resilience, I think. And that willingness to accept brutal truths, no matter how uncomfortable they are.
And speaking of uncomfortable truths, that commitment to reality, it also applies to how a CEO communicates internally. Ben himself admits his single biggest personal improvement as CEO was learning to stop being too positive. As a young CEO, he felt this immense pressure, took losses extremely hard, and thought he had to project this sunny demeanor to protect his employees. Rally the troops, But he realized he was completely wrong.
Yeah, he figured this out during a conversation with his brother-in-law, who worked at AT&T. His brother-in-law mentioned this senior executive saying, he comes by about once a quarter to blow a little sunshine up my ass. Ouch. And at that moment, Ben understood his own positivity delusion. His team knew reality was way more nuanced, and his relentless optimism, it just felt like lies.
It highlights a core mistake. As the CEO, he was married to the company, right? So he took bad news the hardest. He thought it was his job, and only his job, to worry. But it was a total waste to have all those smart people just sitting there not working on the biggest problems when they could fix them. If he kept setbacks to himself, there was no way to actually jumpstart the problem-solving process.
Exactly. And this leads to 3 key reasons why telling it like it is, transparency, is absolutely imperative. First, trust. There's this inverse relationship between communication and trust. Telling things exactly as they are is critical for building that trust. And trust, he says, is the difference between efficient companies and chaotic ones.
Makes sense. Second, the more brains working on the hard problems, the better. It's just a total waste, isn't it? To hire incredibly smart people and then not let them work on your biggest, hairiest problems. Like the open source folks say, give it enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. You need everyone engaged.
Absolutely. And third, a good culture ensures bad news travels fast. Horowitz compares it to how critical signals move quickly in robust systems. In too many failed companies, he points out, employees knew about fatal issues long before the company died. But the culture just stifled sharing. It was unsafe to speak up. A healthy company culture rewards bringing problems out into the open. And he cautions against those management maxims like, don't bring me a problem without bringing me a solution. Because what if an employee sees a critical problem they can't solve? You don't want them burying that.
Right. So the final thought on transparency is really clear. Despite that overwhelming psychological pressure to be overly positive, you absolutely must stand up to that fear and just tell it like it is. Okay, now let's tackle what are arguably the most difficult tests of leadership out there: layoffs and executive firings. Horowitz shares this astonishing story. His company, Opsware, recovered from 3 consecutive massive layoffs. They lost 400 employees in total. Venture capitalists were just amazed, calling it a violation of the laws of venture capital physics. They'd never seen a company recover like that to achieve a billion-dollar-plus outcome. How did Opsware do it? By doing it the right way.
It sounds almost counterintuitive, doesn't it? But Horowitz breaks down the right way to lay people off into steps. First, get your head right. The weight on the CEO is just crushing. He remembers getting an employee email during the first layoff saying, Ben is either lying or stupid or both. He thought, definitely stupid. It's incredibly hard to focus on the future when the past feels so overwhelming, but that's exactly what you have to do.
Okay, head right first. Then, don't delay. Once the decision is made, move fast. Leaks will happen if you wait, creating agitation, forcing managers to lie or look foolish. Swift execution is key.
Next, be clear about why. Don't sugarcoat it. This isn't about individual performance, it's about company failure. The message absolutely has to be, the company failed, and in order to move forward, we will have to lose some excellent people. Admitting failure is critical for rebuilding trust because, let's face it, a layoff shatters the trust a CEO works to build every single day.
That's a tough message to deliver. And crucially, train your managers. This is the golden rule, he says. Managers must lay off their own people, not HR. Why? Because people will remember every single detail of that day forever. The company's reputation and the manager's reputations depend on them standing tall, so managers need preparation. Explain it's company failure, not personal. State the decision is non-negotiable. Provide all the benefit details clearly.
Then, address the entire company. This is the CEO's job. Deliver this overall message before the individual layoffs happen. It provides context and gives air cover for the managers. And remember, this message is primarily for the people who are staying. They will care deeply, deeply about how their departing colleagues are treated. And while you need to show empathy, be careful not to apologize too much. The company has to move forward.
Right. Focus on the future. And finally, be visible. Be present. After giving that awful speech, the instinct is probably to hide. Don't. Be out there, be visible, be engaging. People need to see you, see that you care. Talk to people, help them where you can, appreciate their efforts, even as they leave. Okay, that's layoffs. Now, let's shift to preparing to fire an executive. It's a weird paradox, right? You recruit them, paint this beautiful picture, and then one day you realize you have to fire them. Horowitz says it's often easier than other firings because executives are usually professional about it, but it's absolutely crucial to do it correctly, or you'll just end up doing it again soon.
And Horowitz argues pretty strongly that firing an executive is typically your failure. You need to do a root cause analysis. It usually reveals an interview integration process system failure. It's often not about their incompetence, but about why you hired the wrong person in the first place. Could be a poorly defined role. Maybe you hired for lack of weakness instead of critical strengths, hired for scale too soon, or maybe you just failed to integrate them properly. He also notes special cases where jobs naturally change as the company grows, requiring different skills than before.
Okay, so you figure out the root cause, why you messed up. What's next?
Next is informing the board. This can be tricky, especially if it's happened before. The board will be alarmed, but look, your choice is alarm them or let an entire department rot. Choose alarm. Your goals here are to get their support and understanding, get approval for the separation package. Remember, execs take about 10 times longer to find new jobs, and importantly, preserve the executive's reputation as much as possible. Do these calls individually, by phone, not in some big dramatic board meeting.
Got it. Then, preparing for the conversation with the executive themselves. Script it or rehearse it. They will remember this conversation. Be clear on the reasons. Use decisive language like I have decided. Have the severance package ready to go. They'll immediately be thinking about themselves and their family. And here's that crucial Bill Campbell advice again. You cannot let him keep his job, but you absolutely can let him keep his respect. It's usually best to let the executive decide how the news is communicated to the rest of the company. Give them that control.
Right. And finally, preparing company communication. Inform the exec's direct reports first, then other staff, then the rest of the company, all in the same day, ideally within hours. You need an interim plan ready. Often it's smart for the CEO to step into the role temporarily. Keep the message positive about the future. Don't Throw the exec under the bus. Remember, your best employees are often closest to the fired executive, and you don't want to signal they might be next. Treat people like adults. They'll generally act like adults.
Okay. Wow. And then there's maybe the most deeply personal, agonizing decision of all. Demoting a loyal friend. Horowitz describes hiring his best friends, people he trusted implicitly, who worked tirelessly in the early days. But then the day comes when the company needs someone with more experience to run their function. How on earth do you handle that?
Yeah, it's tough. The first question is, should you even do it? And Horowitz's answer is a clear yes if the company needs it. Your buddy who landed the first few deals, probably not the best choice to build a global sales organization later on. You have to take what he calls a Confucian approach. The good of the individual must sometimes be sacrificed to the good of the whole. Painful, but necessary.
Okay, so you decide you have to do it. How do you break the news? You have to be ready for some intense emotions, right?
Absolutely. Prepare for two deep ones.
Yeah.
Embarrassment, how will they explain this demotion to their friends, their family?
Yep.
And betrayal, but I've been here from the beginning. How could you do this?
Yeah, these are powerful, valid emotions, and as the leader, you have to navigate them carefully.
So how do you manage that conversation?
The key, he says, to any emotional discussion is to try and take the emotion out by being crystal clear about your decision.
You also have to be genuinely comfortable with the thought that they might quit. If you can't afford to lose them, frankly, you can't make this change. You also need to decide the best new role for them. Having them report directly to their replacement can be incredibly toxic. Maybe move them to another area where their knowledge is valuable and they can develop new skills.
Right, and in that actual conversation, Horowitz advises, use appropriate language. I have decided not, I think maybe we should. Don't let them lobby to keep the old job. It's decided. Admit reality. Look, if you're a founder CEO, you might be just as underskilled for your job as they are for theirs. Don't dodge that truth. Admit that having two underskilled people in key roles is a recipe for failure.
Exactly. And acknowledge their contributions. If you genuinely want them to stay, say so explicitly. Make it clear you deeply appreciate everything they've done, and this decision is purely forward-looking, about the company's future needs. And here's a really interesting suggestion. The best way to show you still value them, if appropriate, is to increase their compensation along with the demotion. Your goal isn't to somehow take this sting out completely. You can't. But to be honest, clear, fair, and ultimately effective. They might hate it in the moment, but over time, they'll likely respect the honesty.
This really drives home the hard things aspect. Okay, this brings us to another tough topic, a particularly insidious problem that creeps in when companies are losing. Lies that losers tell. Horowitz says when a company starts losing its major battles, truth often becomes the first casualty. Leaders, employees. They start developing these creative narratives to avoid facing the obvious facts.
Yeah, he outlined several of these familiar lies, like, oh, she left, but we were going to fire her anyway, or give her a bad performance review. Suddenly, this third category of attrition people leaving who were supposedly underperformers grows rapidly in struggling companies. How did all these superstars suddenly turn into crap? Or, we totally would have won that deal, but the other guys basically gave it away, blaming competitors' pricing, never your own product's competitiveness. The CEO often just believes the sales rep without digging deeper. And maybe my personal favorite, look, just because we missed the intermediate milestones doesn't mean we won't hit our final product schedule. Hope springs eternal, right?
So where do these lies actually come from? Horowitz shares this insight from a conversation with Andy Grove of Intel. Grove explained that humans, especially people who build things, tend to only listen to leading indicators of good news. If user engagement increases, great, hire more engineers. If it decreases, well, they'll intensely explain it away. The site was slow, it was the holidays, we changed the UI. Both indicators might be wrong or right, but Grove's point was most CEOs only really act on the positive signals and find excuses for the negative ones.
So if you're wondering why your employees are lying to you, Horowitz says they probably aren't. They're lying to themselves. And if you believe them, then you're lying to yourself too. And this creates this really dangerous echo chamber of self-deception that stops you from actually facing reality and fixing the core problems.
And that self-deception often prevents leaders from doing what's necessary, from deploying what Horowitz memorably calls no silver bullets, only lead bullets.
Right. He tells this story from his early days at Netscape. Microsoft launched a new web server that was 5 times faster and free. Ouch. Ben's first instinct. Look for silver bullets, partnerships, acquisitions, anything to broaden their product line and sort of surround the core problem without directly confronting it. But his engineering counterpart, Bill Turpin, who'd battled Microsoft before, was brutally blunt. Turpin told him, "Ben, those silver bullets, they're fine and good, but our web server is 5 times slower. There is no silver bullet that's going to fix that. No, we're going to have to use a lot of lead bullets." It's a jarring reality check. They ended up focusing the engineering team squarely on those painful fundamental performance issues. They actually beat Microsoft's performance and grew that server line into a $400 million business. But it wouldn't have happened without facing the need for those lead bullets.
And he carried that lesson directly to Opsware, didn't he? When Blade Logic was consistently beating them in deals, the pressure was immense. His smart team came up with all sorts of silver bullet ideas to avoid the direct fight. Build a lightweight product, acquire a simpler company, focus only on a small niche. But Ben's response to every single one was clear. There are no silver bullets for this, only lead bullets.
It just crystallizes the core message, doesn't it? Sometimes there's no window, no hole, no escape hatch, no back door. You simply have to go straight through the front door and deal with the big, ugly guy blocking it. That's how Opsware, after 9 incredibly rugged months of work, regained its product lead and eventually sold for $1.6 billion. He warns that many people in an organization will do almost anything to avoid facing a truly existential threat. They'll look for any alternative, any shortcut, any excuse.
And he challenges this directly, asking that really tough question. If our company isn't good enough to win, then do we need to exist at all? You have to stop looking for the silver bullet. Sometimes a company just has to fight for its life with lead bullets. And all of this, all these hard truths, they lead to what might be the most brutal yet strangely liberating lesson in the whole chapter. Nobody cares. Horowitz recounts feeling really sorry for himself back at LoudCloud. How could anyone expect him to succeed? Half their customers went out of business. It was impossible to raise money. IPOs basically vanished overnight. The circumstances felt genuinely impossible.
And then he shares that legendary anecdote about the football coach, Bill Parcells, complaining about his team's injuries to the Raiders owner, Al Davis. Parcells apparently said something like, "Al, I am just not sure how we can win without so many of our best players. What should I do?" And Davis's legendary reply was just, "Bill, nobody cares. Just coach your team."
And that, Ben Horowitz says, might just be the best piece of CEO advice ever given. Because when things go catastrophically wrong in your company, nobody cares. Not the media, not your investors, not your board, not your employees. Even your mama doesn't care. It's harsh, but true.
And they are absolutely right not to care. Because having a great reason for failing, as Horowitz puts it, won't preserve a single dollar for your investors. It won't save a single employee's job. It won't get you a single new customer. And it especially won't make you feel any better when you eventually go bankrupt, because you are focused on the excuses instead of the solutions.
So the actionable takeaway is incredibly starkly clear. Stop spending your precious mental energy elaborating on your misery or the unfairness of it all. Devote 0 time to what you could have done differently and all your time, all your energy on what you might still be able to do, because in the end, nobody cares. You just have to run your company.
Wow. Yeah. This deep dive into when things fall apart from the hard thing about hard things. It's just been such a stark reminder that leadership isn't about avoiding the hard things at all. It's about confronting them directly, honestly, and with this unwavering commitment to finding a way through no matter what.
It really is. It's about resilience, incredible courage, and an almost brutal level of self-awareness and honesty. So as you, our listener, reflect on your own challenges, whether they're professional or personal, we leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Are you currently looking for a silver bullet, or are you ready, maybe even needing, to deploy the lead ones? Are you willing to face the brutal truth that ultimately nobody cares about your excuses and simply get on with the hard work of running your company or your life?